Back in 2018, my family decided to take a vacation on a cruise ship. None of us had ever been on one before, and we thought it would be a fantastic first-time experience together. We set sail from Miami, Florida, embarking on a 7-day trip to the Bahamas. At 17, I was thrilled to finally understand why so many people loved cruises. However, as the week went on, it didn't turn out to be as exciting as I'd hoped. Essentially, you're on a floating hotel with a bunch of strangers. The only real fun I had was when we docked in the Bahamas and got to explore the area. But on the 7th day, as we headed back to Miami, I decided to take a walk around the bow of the ship by myself. It was late. The rest of my family was in the dining hall, drinking and celebrating our last night on the cruise. Meanwhile, I was leaning on the rail at the bow, gazing out into the pitch-black ocean. To be honest, it was quite terrifying to look into the darkness. I couldn't help but think, what if someone fell overboard? You wouldn't be able to see them at all. As I continued staring into the void, I noticed the moonlight reflecting off the necklace I was wearing. It was a gift from my grandmother, given to me just before she passed away a few years ago. Lost in thoughts of her and the eerie darkness of the ocean, I suddenly noticed a man approaching me. At this point in the story, I should mention that I was a bit tipsy. The man seemed quite attractive, and my guard was down. He greeted me and asked for my name. We started chatting a bit when I suddenly realized how isolated we were. It was just the two of us by the bow of the ship, with no one else in sight. This realization quickly sobered me up. Despite his attractiveness, I began to feel uneasy. Nervously, I told him I needed to get back to the dining hall. As I started to walk away, he grabbed my arm hard. I told him to let go, but he just looked at my chest and said, "That's a lovely necklace." I tried to yank my arm free, but he was too strong. He tore the necklace right off my neck. I started screaming at him to give it back, and that's when things took a nightmarish turn. He slapped me hard across the cheek and then grabbed me in a bear hug. He was trying to lift me up and throw me off the bow of the ship. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I screamed so loudly that I thought my throat might tear. I fought desperately for my life as he aggressively tried to lift me over the railing. Miraculously, 2 crew members heard my screams and rushed over. One grabbed hold of the man, while the other pulled me back from the edge. By this point, I was in tears, overwhelmed with fear and relief. The crew members radioed for backup, and within 2 minutes, around 10 security personnel arrived at the scene. They detained the man and locked him in the brig. I remember asking myself, "What's the brig?" A crew member explained that it was the ship's jail cell. That's how I discovered that cruise ships have jails. Eventually, my family found me, and I was reunited with my grandmother's necklace. In the end, the cruise line offered us a full refund and a 5-year pass for their first-class suites. As for the man who attacked me, he was arrested for assault when we docked in Miami. I don't know what his sentence was. I hope you enjoyed this surprising fact about cruise ships.
My grandparents decided to take the whole family on a Caribbean cruise during Christmas time. There were 14 of us, so we were spread out across different cabins and floors. My sister and I shared a room. I was 16 and she was 14. On our first night, we could barely sleep because the couple in the adjoining cabin were having a very loud argument. The man kept calling the woman names and shouting that she was only there because of his money. The argument went on until the early hours of the morning. After that night, everything was quiet, and I assumed the woman had moved to another cabin, as I never saw or heard from her again. The next day, we got up early for breakfast. I was eager to explore the ship, but my sister was taking a while to get ready. I thought that waiting in the corridor might encourage her to hurry up. While I was waiting, I heard the door of the neighboring cabin open. I couldn't help but look to see who the man was that had been shouting so much. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and a horrible feeling washed over me. A feeling I now recognize as gut instinct. I just knew from the way he looked at me that he was bad news. He appeared to be in his 40s and seemed normal enough, but I couldn't shake the shivers running up my spine. He said hello, but all I could manage was a faint smile. I decided to head back into my room. As I knocked on the door, I noticed the man walking down the corridor toward the elevators, constantly glancing back at me. From that point on, he seemed to be everywhere. At lunch, he would sit close by in the dining room. By the pool, he was only a few loungers away. A couple of times, I got into the elevator only to have him run in behind me, even though I hadn't seen him around before I entered. Luckily, whenever this happened, I was never alone. There were always other people in the elevator. All he did was stand and stare at me, sending shivers down my back. For the first couple of days, I tried to ignore it. I had always gotten attention from boys and tried to brush it off as just that. Attention. But something felt off, especially considering how huge the ship was and how many people were on board. It was hard to believe he was just randomly bumping into me. We had told my mom, dad, and the rest of the family about the argument in the adjoining cabin on the first night, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything about the man following me. I felt embarrassed. Silly, I know. Near the end of the week, I wanted to leave the pool and get changed to go watch a movie with my cousins. My sister wanted to stay at the pool, so I headed to the room by myself. When I got into the elevator with a few other people, I noticed the man sneaking in at the last second, and a feeling of dread washed over me as he stared at me. The other people in the elevator got off at our stop but went in another direction. As I walked down the corridor to my room, I could feel the man's eyes on the back of my neck. I quickly sped up and hurried to my room. A minute passed, and there was a knock at my door. I immediately knew it was him. There had been no one else in the corridor. The knocks continued as I panicked, trying to decide what to do. I thought I had to answer the door because he had seen me enter and knew I was inside. I opened the door, and the man had the creepiest smile on his face. "Hey, sweet thing, I'm locked out of my room. Can I come in and use your phone?" I knew he was lying, so I quickly thought of a way to get out of the situation. "Sorry, our phone isn't working," I said as I tried to shut the door. "Oh, you're Scottish?" he asked in a surprised voice. I mumbled something in agreement while trying to close the door, but he stuck his foot in. I decided to use all my strength to slam the door against his foot. He cried out in pain but then put his other foot in. "Hey, I just need to come in for a minute," he kept shouting. I told him he could go to reception and continued to try to shut the door, panic flooding through me. I heard someone say, "Jess, what's going on?" With relief, I realized it was my older male cousin Jonathan coming by so we could watch the film. "Hey, who are you?" Jonathan shouted at the man. "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were Scottish. I thought I knew your friend from back in the US, the guy mumbled. "It's just a little misunderstanding." He hopped away and proceeded to enter his room. We left the next morning and I didn't see him again. But I'll never forget that creepy expression he had on his face every time he looked at me. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Ah, what a tranquil and luxurious voyage, romantic, spacious, and comfortable. But what if there were some passengers who made you feel a little less at ease? Disappearing people, strange men making weird advances. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and get ready for one horror story that unfolded while sailing the vast ocean aboard a cruise ship. When I was about 15, I went on a cruise with my parents around Asia. One night, as I was making my way back to the kids' club, my mom insisted I join to meet new friends. After changing into my swimsuit in the cabin, it was around midnight. Since about 90% of the people on the ship were elderly, they were already in bed. Everywhere I went, it was empty. My cabin was on the lowest level of the ship, while the pool was on the top deck, so I had a fair way to go to get there. After waiting for one of the 6 elevators to open for 5 minutes, I got impatient and ran for the stairs. That was when I heard, "Are you running away from me?" I turned around, and there he was, a man in his late 20s, clad from head to toe in gray, grinning at me, leaving me unsure of how to respond. Despite my discomfort, I mustered a slight smile and attempted to continue on my way. Yet he swiftly moved, blocking my path, bombarding me with questions. "What's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? Why are you so uncomfortable around me?" With quick thinking, I fabricated a story, claiming my parents were awaiting my return, and hastily walked away before he could reply. Later, around 1:30 to 2 a.m., after bidding farewell to my newfound friends, I began my journey back towards the stairs. And wouldn't you know it, I encountered the same man once more. He was ascending the stairs just as I was preparing to descend. The moment he laid eyes on me, that unsettling grin returned. Purposefully obstructing my path, his inquiries became increasingly personal. He persistently praised my appearance, insisting I had a pretty smile and was beautiful, even offering to escort me to my cabin. My instincts screamed for me to flee. It was the second encounter, and each time the situation grew more intense. Encountering him again on the same floor, I couldn't shake the growing concern that his cabin might be nearby. With each interaction, my worries mounted. Every time he spoke, I'd hastily reply, "I have to go." Yet his persistence fueled his frustration. The situation escalated as he grew angrier, bombarding me with more questions, compliments, and even unwelcome touches. In a moment of desperation, I pushed him away, causing him to collide with the nearby wall. However, his demeanor swiftly shifted. Taking a deep breath, he flashed me a disconcerting smile. Fearing for my safety, I bolted. Racing through the glass doors to the pool deck, I collided with one of the boys from the club, seeking refuge from the unsettling encounter. As panic consumed me, I found myself hyperventilating and speaking in rapid bursts, leaving my friend bewildered. When I turned around to point out the man, he had vanished into thin air. Relaying the incident to my parents prompted my dad to accompany me to the club each night for added security. Meanwhile, my determined mom and I scoured the ship's photo gallery, hoping to identify him among the mandatory passenger photos. To our bewilderment, he appeared in none of them. After that encounter, he seemed to vanish from the ship entirely. It's as if he never existed. I'm left to ponder what might have unfolded had I not fled and found my friend. The lingering question remains, was he even real? With no one but me having seen him, the mystery of the cruise ship man endures.